The Office is one of my favourite sitcoms. It's my comfort show, so when I heard they were rebooting it or creating a spin-off, I had mixed feelings. One part of me craves more good comedy series, so is all for it, and the other part of me feels like they're just trying to milk the last remaining droplets out of the carcass of my beloved sitcom when they should just create an original mockumentary instead. Then the trailer for the paper came out, and it was disconcertingly bereft of laughs, and the one promo clip they released was better, but still pretty basic safe humour. So I was skeptical to say the least, but now that I've binge-watched the full first series, I can conclude that it's fine. It's watchable, but obviously nowhere near the quality of The Office. However, for a first season of a mockumentary, fine isn't actually as bad as it sounds. I still skip the first season of the US Office whenever I'm rewatching it because it still hadn't found its identity yet, and just didn't make me laugh. And Parks and Rec also took a while to get going. It's often the case with sitcoms that it takes time for the writers and actors to find the right tone and tempo together, and for the audience to click with the dynamics of the show. This is why the best sitcoms are sort of like a comedic pinball machine. Once we understand the characters, the story ball can launch into the structure of the show and start bouncing around. And given we know how each character will probably react, we can anticipate the incoming disaster and just enjoy every step of it. But that only comes from our familiarity with the characters from seeing their reactions to situations again and again, which is why the paper does actually improve as it goes along. The first episode is definitely the most jarring, as no one feels like they've found their footing yet, and the writers are just trying to set everything up. But after a few episodes, we see everyone relax into their roles. Now, I would be lying if I said the show made me laugh out loud, even once properly, but I did smirk to myself a few times with a sort of appreciation that, yeah, this is kind of funny. But the whole time I was watching it, I just couldn't stop thinking about the one thing the paper really lacks that The Office had: energy. Parkour! Chaos, momentum, whatever you want to call it, The Office had it. While the paper still feels a bit too placid and calm, no one seems captured by their emotions, they're just hampered by their own stupidity at times. The Office had Michael Scott, who's such an irrational force of nature that you can see the ripple effect of anything he does spread throughout the office. As even though he's the manager, really they all have to manage him. Dwight and Andy were also highly proactive, larger-than-life personalities that can be a bit cartoonish, but it works because they're playing it silly and the rest of the office are playing it straight. This means the normal characters don't need to do much to get a laugh because it's in such sharp contrast to the silliness they're being presented with. In fact, The Office finds a perfect balance where practically half the office is playing it silly and the other half is playing it straight. Whereas the paper feels like everyone is playing it straight, but just occasionally doing silly things. At the moment, Esmeralda is definitely the character with the most comedic potential, and although I initially found her annoying, by the end of the season, she did grow on me, as her jokes went from being haha, English isn't her first language, to her culturally saying things that are so blunt and rude without even realizing it. And that's good, because we need someone to create conflict and spice things up, otherwise it is just a boring version of The Office. For a newspaper, I was surprised to see that most of the characters are just incompetent and bored, as opposed to some highly arrogant or older pretentious journalists who had one good story 20 years ago and still act like they're Woodward and Bernstein, or characters who have a very clear political agenda to push that they try to cram into everything, even where it doesn't belong. This would give us deeper insight into the characters' flaws, and we would then automatically know where they're coming from and be able to predict their role in future conflicts. But instead, everyone's a bit of a blank slate at the moment. The only potentially funny characters right now are Esmeralda sometimes, Ned, although they can't really seem to decide if they want him to be the privileged nepo baby, the slick salesman, the genuine boss, or the idiot yet, Ken, who initially seemed like discount David Brent, but he got better as it went along, and Travis, who has a lot of, let's just say, unlocked potential. Everyone else is kind of a bit too forgettable at the moment. They're not endearingly flawed or kooky or ambitious yet. They're just kind of there with some mild characteristics. But that's why I think the paper needs to dial the energy levels up, as if there isn't a Michael Scott level character to bring out the comedic reactions of these supporting characters, then we won't get invested in their stories as we won't see ourselves in them. Having said that, I do understand that it is still early days, and given how sharply The Office turned it around between season 1 and 2, I'm almost optimistic of where the paper could go if they take bigger risks. But they do need to take those risks, because it all feels a bit safe and needlessly mediocre at the moment. Like they're not even trying to compete with their predecessor and happy to settle for a passable sequel. Although it is admittedly a tough situation. If you don't make it identical to The Office, people are going to say it's too different and we miss the heights of what came before. And if you make it too like The Office, then everyone will just say it's a pointless rehash. With that said, the romantic elements of the paper currently feel a bit rushed, as if the writers are worried that if they don't let us know who fits with who right away, then we'll get bored and tune out. Although they could just feel like, given Jim and Pam had such a multi-season long storyline in The Office, that there's no need to slow roll it here because we'll all see it coming anyway. But it still feels a bit too quick to resolve romantic tension. For instance, we're told very directly that Detrick likes Nicole, but she wants to keep her options open. Yet they still hook up within a few episodes. So there's no mystery to this will they won't they, it's just a matter of when will she change her mind. Ken likes Esmeralda, but that will probably remain mostly unrequited until she inevitably uses him for validation when she's feeling low. And Ned and Mare end up admitting that they like one another, but Ned has hesitations about the power dynamics of an office romance. And that's probably why this storyline feels a bit dull so far. Ned is too much of a think first, act second kind of character. In the Michael and Jan dynamic, he's Jan. And Mare is also kind of reserved, so while she's emotionally closer to being Michael, she still has the energy of Jan. Two Jans in a relationship isn't going to be funny to watch, as there's nothing outrageous to react to. Detrick is actually the closest to being a Michael in his dynamic, but he still seems to understand boundaries, and while he is a bit naive, he's also kind of mature and responds to others' feedback. And this is kind of what I mean overall about the characters in the paper so far. Aside from Esmeralda and maybe Ken, they're all a bit something, but not enough. So I hope that in the second season, which has been greenlit, that they dial everything up more and commit to what kind of energy they want each character to bring to the table. That way we can enjoy the chaos of having lots of conflicting voices in the room every step of the way. And then we come to the storylines. Sitcoms don't necessarily rely on plot. It's usually just a spark that the characters fuel into a fire. But given the paper is about another dying paper industry, except this time it's news instead of just selling office paper, there is a big opportunity for social commentary here. In season 1 they focus a lot on clickbait articles, cookies, and reviewing products as a source of revenue. But given they mention that teenage bloggers get more readers than their local newspaper now, the writers could really hone in on what's happening to our information ecosystem and where everyone's incentives lie. They sort of touch on it in the second episode when Ned is excited at the prospect of a serial killer in their town just so his first print can pack a punch. But what other lengths do the paper have to go to compete in this attention economy? Do they push conspiracy theories, try to compete with live streamers, manufacture stories or fake conflict just so they have something to report on? There's a lot about our current media landscape that could be uncovered comedically without being too preachy. This is why one of the better episodes of the series was uncovering a catfish scam that Esmeralda is too proud to admit she's been tricked by. And these are the types of stories that may feel small in comparison to global conflicts, but fit into local news and are relatable for the audience, as these are some of the many hazards of online life. So I think the writers should lean into these issues more in the second season, blur the lines between truth and fiction, between honest reporting and divisive propaganda, have characters who want to do the right thing and others who just want to make money or become famous. And Ned then has to find the balance between these new financial incentives and his idealistic principles. Because the danger of not covering these topics is the paper will feel outdated as soon as it's released, as you're not even engaging with what's happening to the industry you're reporting on. So overall, after finishing the first season of the paper, I'm cautiously optimistic, as I was expecting disaster and was instead served something pretty palatable. But while it avoided the first landmine of just not working at all, it now needs to up the ante and dial up the energy levels and social commentary so that it becomes, firstly funnier, but secondly relevant to watch, as I think it would be strange if a show about the news never felt relevant. And yes, it's not easy to land those special heartwarming moments that The Office pulled off, but it is easier to get there if you capture the viewers with humour to begin with. And at the moment, the paper feels a bit too restrained and wary of its own existence. It sometimes feels like dramatic actors just trying out comedy, as opposed to real comedy actors doing their thing. So although I wouldn't recommend the show for a good laugh yet, I wouldn't warn people away from it either. There could be something here. And there were moments that I smiled and enjoyed myself, even if I didn't fully laugh out loud. But what did you think? Is the paper everything you hoped and dreamed, a complete dumpster fire, or somewhere in between? Let me know in the comment section. And if you made it this far, firstly, yes, thank you for watching, but also I need you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and overall signal to that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.